Just letting my friends at the College of Esports know I'm live. Thank you guys for being here this week. There's like 72 hours of amazing. It's already been some amazing presentations. Please stick around. But I'm Bubba Geddert from the College of Esports here in East London. And I'm going to present to you today some really fun stuff. Now, I'm very excited because I get to talk about video games. Obviously, I think we all like video games. Today, I'm going to present to you about understanding game-based learning in esports education. It's a study in structure and impact. Now, big thanks to the folks at Esports Research Network. This event could not go on without them. Tobias, Seth, and of course, Cameron, thank you so much for doing all the fun tech stuff this week or these last few months. Now, this presentation goes through 5 beats. There are 5 specific beats to this presentation. I'm going to talk to you about my 2023 mindset and how that shifted. I'm going to talk to you about lighting a fire, as well as reshaping my literature review, some of my current game-based learning examples, and some calls for ideas and some sources, and you'll see why. Now, why did I move to London, I think is the question. It's American moving to London. I'm going to make sure I have the chat open so I can see anybody there, especially from my friends here in London. Well, my wife and I, we wanted to move to London. We have 3 teenagers. We wanted to do something exciting. She works for a charity based out of London. And I was offered this position here as a senior lecturer at the College of Esports. In 2023, though, I was like, a whole university devoted to esports and games. I mean, that just in the States, it was, somebody said, hey, we're doing an esports degree. A lot of times they just slapped an E on a communication class and said, we got an esports minor. See you later. Well, I was a little hesitant, but I got here in 2023. My wife connected with the students. She's not a gamer, so that was going to be fun conversation, but she did, and we loved it. We moved over here last fall. That's autumn for those in London. Last August, we've been here over a little over a year, but this is a university that doesn't have a lot of degrees and then an esports degree or a few esports pathways. We only teach esports and games, and the degrees here are university degrees in the United Kingdom, but we have esports coaching management as a degree. Then we do the business of esports, whether that be digital marketing pathway, digital media, and what I get to teach as the program lead for events is events management. And we also have games development with art and design. Now, jumping to the research, why did I even start this? Why did I even start this research? Well, you'll see why I talked about this institution the way I did and why I introduced it the way it is. But I kind of thought to myself, I'm tired of just being a pracademic. It wasn't enough for me to have experience and teach students to just learn from my mistakes. I'm helping them. I'm wanting them to build esports 2.0. I'm wanting them to be better than us and make the industry stronger. And me as an expert in esports and gaming, bringing that experience, but also being an educator for many years, which 11 years to be exact. Back in the U.S., I was just a part-time adjunct professor in the United States, and then I did a full year here in the U.K. Such a big shift from, as my boss Simon says, to the same language separated by an ocean. Okay, I don't know how he says it. He's more eloquent British. And it was a big shift for me. I also didn't have the typical degree path of an education and teaching degree. My degree was in recreational management and sports. And so I didn't sit in class like a lot of you did and learn about Dewey and learn about all sorts of ways to teach. I was doing teaching in a sports classroom or on the field. So coaching is really what I was doing. A lot of coaching. I was doing organizational leadership, nonprofit charity work for many, many years, tech, broadcast, and events, of course. But then I started learning about contemporary traditional versus progressive teaching. I mean, you can obviously go from super rote type teaching to Montessori or something like that. And I started just like challenging the status quo. I wasn't in this seating or the setting where I'm learning about education in the university level and going out to do sessions to teach and student teaching. I just started teaching because I was asked 13 years ago to start teaching. And I kept pushing this idea of I don't want to just talk at students, just talking at them. And this is me. I think, do I have a different perspective because I didn't sit in the classroom learning about this stuff? Or is it about me being stubborn? Probably the second part. I know I do a lot of practical teaching and we do a lot of scenario based learning and activities, but I mean, that's the benefit of what we do at our university. We don't do exams. The students each year in my course do an event as an assessment. And they're coaching for an assessment. Marketing media, the game students, they're building a game as an assessment. So it's not just talking at people. We have the autonomy to do fun things, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to hit a new level. And where would I direct this energy? Where would I direct this energy? Well, I got lucky. I got lucky because along came a perfect suggestion. Okay. Along came a perfect suggestion from the Esports Research Network back, I think, in May or June. I had all this thoughts, energy swirling around. What am I going to do next year for teaching? And then comes along this nice little suggestion: game-based learning and educational esport programs. I love game-based learning, not gamification, or you can debate that. We'll debate that later. Educational esports programs. Oh my gosh, I'm an educator at an esports institution. This is perfect. Great suggestion, Tobias, or whoever put that up there. I'm excited to do some research and dig in. Well, game-based learning. I could see how it could help my student. All my students surely could benefit from something, especially students at a specialized university where the pathways are esports. I decided, okay, what am I going to measure? I'm going to measure attendance. I'm going to measure engagement, how they're engaged, and I'm going to measure their learning. So there's learning outcomes within our every class and in our syllabus or our units. And how am I going to survey them pre-post? It's honestly been pretty fun to get the reactions on these surveys because a lot of these games I'm doing have really stressed them out. And it's part of that process, I think. Now, like I said, we're at an institution where we're in the United Kingdom, specialize, and we're not doing other degrees like zoology and chemistry and underwater basket weaving. We're not doing that stuff. We're doing esports and games. So this idea of doing research in esports was a fit. So I looked at my timeline. June through August, I start doing literature review, gathering stuff, getting games ready, finding a bunch of research, doing stuff in class right now up to today, which is November 12th, and saying, okay, here's what I'm presenting, here's what I'm doing, and continue to run games through next May, but then start reporting my findings. So I started looking at all the typical places, websites, research, many, many more. But I started getting a little confused on these categories. I found so many different research papers, but they tended to be just all over the place. And I was getting kind of lost at how many different things there were and what categories there were. And so I felt like there was some missing research. There was missing research in higher education for game-based learning. There's also missing research for higher education and esports degrees. Now, there's research for higher education in esports, but there's a lot of competition, or this is literally what we're talking about today. There's lots of stuff in this space, but esports students specifically, rather than just players, and ones that are at a university doing game-based learning in a classroom with esports students. And w- the benefit of trying to do this at our university is that we're only teaching esports. So this research I found was all over the place in different models and different ways, and it made me think about how we hype game-based learning. We hype game-based learning in esports programs. Our team is doing game-based learning, playing on a team with because we're playing as a team, so it's game-based learning. Agree. That's correct. The curriculum I got to help write with Dr. Christy Custer and Dr. Mike Russell, gaming concepts, doing game-based learning through curriculum. Chris Avelius has game-based learning curriculum. Many people do, and they're out there. We're using that terminology, or in titles, Valorant or Overwatch teaches you game-based learning through, or Minecraft. I mean, I talk about Minecraft being something that my kids got to do in third grade, and how they did that as game-based learning for their class. And so I thought there's just way too many ways to focus. I was looking at, I saw primary, I saw secondary education, high school, higher education. Then there was like, there's game-based learning digital wise, there's game-based learning for board games, in video games. There's after-school programs type game-based learning research there, or extracurricular esports clubs. Maybe that's varsity, or that's higher education, or that's an after-school Minecraft club, and then different curriculum. There's based on that. There's stuff in the USA, UK, other locations. Then this gamification versus game-based learning. There's a good research paper that talks about the difference between the two of those that I'm citing in my research. And sometimes they're combined or misconstrued or thought differently. Social emotional learning, intrinsic motivation, STEM, STEAM, all these things were tied in. There were so many. And I was just like, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do. There's too much. And so I'm going to make a matrix of matrices upon matrices and say, this is a UK, this is a US, and this is my literature review, by the way. This is what it's going to be. I said, I'm going to do all these things. It's going to line up. Here, if it's in USA research, it's then secondary, but it's based on social emotional learning and yada, yada, yada. No, way overwhelmed myself. So luckily I got some feedback. I got some feedback from Tobias. I got some feedback from Sam at the College of Esports, who presented here last year, who teaches on our coaching course. And I got some feedback, and I said, I'm just going to write a paper about that. I'm going to write a separate paper about categorizing game-based learning in esports, not games, but esports, because there's so many different ways that it's shown. And then I'll use that paper to reference and cite for this research I'm doing right now. Totally fine. I can do it too. It's not a big deal. What am I doing today? What am I doing now in game-based learning in class? Well, I'm doing game-based learning in class with esports students, and I'm not doing video games. Not right now. This next semester, I'll do some stuff with game-based learning in tech. The most fun game I had, and I'll talk about this real quick, is we did like a game about like Mafia or One Night or Traders or Among Us, and it's this class I'm teaching right now of HR and esports, and we're doing a scenario that's a staff meeting, and they had a challenge where the venue dropped out 2 weeks before the event, and now they've got to figure out. So I had them set up a staff meeting. It's about 15 students, and they had to sit there and like figure out how to fix the scenario. What I didn't tell them that is I'm going to give them a piece of paper. So they got in about 3 minutes in, and I gave them all a piece of paper with secret roles. I gave one of them the chairperson. So they said, you're going to run the meeting. I gave another piece of paper to, and I kind of handed this out as I went around as they were talking. You're the optimist. You're always excited. You're talking about everything. I gave one out to the warrior. Oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? How much is this going to cost? There's too much money. There's too much money. Well, let's cut some corners. Then I had a guy, Synergy, the student who I gave it to the student who didn't really talk the most, and he kept just saying things like, we've got to do synergy, guys. We've got to use these big words. Then there was a student who got a piece of paper who gave wild ideas, like just taco trucks or anything crazy. Because then there was a person who is the echo, just repeating ideas and saying, oh yeah, let's do taco trucks. And there was agree or something like, yeah, I agree. Let's do this. And they kept repeating and agreeing to everything that was said, no matter how wild the ideas were. But then I had one student who was upset, but they didn't know who they were upset with because they were just mad and they weren't participating. And it said, don't participate, but only be looking mad until you hear somebody say, Excel Esports Championship. When someone says Excel Esports Championship, you can then throw them on their bus and throw shade and be mad at them. Well, one person then got a ticket, said, you have a great idea about the Excel Esports Championship, but you can't say anything about it until you hear the term beer garden. Well, another person got a little piece of paper that said, you have an idea for a beer garden, but you cannot say beer garden or beer garden. You have to get people to guess. Well, if you look at that, you kind of had work backwards. You couldn't say beer garden until someone said it for him. Excel couldn't say Excel Esports Championship until somebody said beer garden. And the guy who was upset until he heard Excel Esports Championship. So we started getting around this. And before even any of those cascading effects happen, I said, guess what, guys? There's an imposter in your group and they're trying to sabotage the meeting. And we're going to take a vote and find out who is the saboteur. So they voted. And the first person they thought that was the person that was the imposter was the chairperson, not the imposter, this one who was talking the most. And then they voted out the agreeer a few minutes later, and then the optimist because they were so excited. Then the person who kept repeating stuff like, "Yeah, of course he's sabotaging." And then the guy who was like, "Synergy," and the person who threw the wild ideas, they got voted out. And we just kept doing more and more rounds of voting as we kept kind of trying to figure stuff out. And when they got kicked out of the meeting, they had to sit on the side and couldn't say anything. The warrior got kicked out, and then the Excel championship guy got kicked out. Those things had happened. The Excel, the beer, all that had kicked in now. And lastly was the beer guy and the imposter. Beer guy got voted out. But sadly, there was also a minion. The minion was there to make it act like they were trying to sabotage, but also trying to help the imposter win. And they did. The last two people left were the minion and the imposter. And it was to show staff meeting how there's so many different types of people in staff meetings. And you can have these experiences where people are like this. Now, with my last 2 minutes, I'm looking for ideas for games. That's just one of the 15 or 20 games I've done this term already in a couple different classes. And if you've got games you'd love to share, please scan the QR code, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear some ideas. If you may think you're giving me something new, I may have seen it. I don't care. I love to connect with me on LinkedIn. And all right, bye. See you guys.